Good evening, I'm Andrew Chang. Adrienne is away. Tonight, a retirement crisis is coming. More Canadians are set to leave work than ever before, and there aren't enough people to replace them.
It's going to be a major problem.
From long-term care to home care, the ripple effects of our aging population. Could the worst of COVID be behind us?
We are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase.
The U.S. sees declining hospitalizations, fewer deaths. Where things stand in Canada. Should all job postings come with a posted salary?
I probably would not have applied or asked for more.
The Canadian push for pay transparency. And the Quebec City fighting flyers.
We have to find solutions.
All the way to court, and they won. This is The National. With Canada already in the grips of a labor shortage, there's a warning tonight of more trouble ahead for the Canadian workforce. New data from Statistics Canada shows a coming tidal wave of retirees, with the working age population now older than it's ever been. According to the 2021 census, more than 1 in 5 Canadians of working age are now 55 to 64 and approaching retirement. The big problem, there's no easy fix to fill the void. There just aren't enough younger people entering the workforce. And as Carolyn Dunn explains, that's just one of the challenges Canada faces with an aging population.
Canada's looming retirement crisis is a building worry for the construction industry. In the next decade, more than 20% of the construction workforce will retire.
You lose someone with that knowledge and you don't necessarily have, kids coming in to replace. It's going to be a major problem.
Immigration may help, but it's not likely enough to fill the skilled worker gap expected across construction and other fields.
There are very large implications of this situation, and it is certainly one factor explaining the current labor shortages that Canada is experiencing.
And it's not just the workforce aging. The overall population is too. There are now more than 7 million Canadians over 65 and all the worries that come with that.
What you really need is home care that counts.
Oh, I have a 92-year-old aunt that I am taking care of. And I don't think the government realizes the demands that it puts on people.
Carol Keene's solution is to live independently now, but she chose a condo with an attached long-term care facility should she need it in the future.
Your life can change at the next doctor appointment. So then knowing that, I know that this is right here. It takes away the anxiety of thinking, what's going to happen to me when I get old?
And no surprise, there's already a lengthy waiting list for the government-subsidized accommodations.
The demand is ever increasing as our population ages, as now the baby boomers are coming to that point where they're ready to retire and looking for different lifestyle choices, maybe requiring some level of care.
Finding ways to fill the economic, health, and societal gaps created by an aging population is complicated and necessary. We are literally not getting any younger. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
With the population aging rapidly, there is a push to change how Canada cares for its seniors. Some are looking to the example set by Denmark.
So that they actually maybe can take the bath by themselves or go to the kitchen and make their own food or what it may be.
So coming up, we are going to go to Denmark, where helping people age at home is a top priority. Now, the census also marked a Canadian first, some historic new data on how Canadians identify themselves. It now sheds light on the number of transgender and non-binary people in the country. But as Belpuria reports, reaction from the LGBTQ community is mixed.
It was a milestone moment. An Indigenous two-spirit couple from Edmonton won the reality show, The Amazing Race Canada. 3 years later, they're celebrating another victory.
Seeing, gender diverse people being included in the census, again, it's some sort of wow, this is pretty cool.
For the first time, Canada's survey of its population includes the number of people who are transgender or non-binary.
It's really important to start collecting that information because then we can start targeting specific resources towards that population and their health needs.
The 2021 census took a snapshot of Canadians 15 and older. Out of 30.5 million people, just over 100,000 identified as transgender or non-binary. That's 0.33% of the population, or 1 in 300.
I wish that I could congratulate Statistics Canada for measuring my community, but they haven't done it correctly.
Adrienne Smith identifies as a non-binary trans person and was upset by the census line of questioning.
When I got the survey, I was horrified. What they asked is what your sex assignment is at birth, which is a particularly dehumanizing question for trans people, to have to tell the government who you're not.
The second question was about gender. Respondents could choose male, female, or fill in the blank under other. There was concern that language wasn't inclusive. Still, the data collected is something LGBTQ advocates have wanted for years.
I think it's going to help us really kind of cross-examine where are the gaps in terms of employment, healthcare, education. Like, it's just going to allow us to give so much more nuance to what the lived experience is of people from a gender diverse community.
There's hope. The latest census is just the first historic step to make the data more inclusive. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ottawa is bracing for rolling thunder, a planned demonstration by bikers coming to the city this weekend. As Rafi Boudjikanian shows us, after the trucker convoy protests that paralyzed a part of downtown Ottawa during the winter, police are not taking any chances.
Rolling thunder, Ottawa is still a go.
Another protest on wheels is destined for Ottawa. This time it's motorcycles, raising fears of a repeat of this winter's so-called trucker convoy. It was allowed to occupy Ottawa for 3 weeks, leaving residents with bad memories.
I was yelled at a lot just for wearing my mask outside. Profanities like calling me a sheep, like stuff like that. Just, yeah, you're not listening to the real story.
I'm a kind of middle-aged white guy, so I think that there was an expectation that I would be on their side for some things. And I think wearing the masks definitely tipped them off that I wasn't.
This weekend's planned biker rally is described by this man, Neil Sheard, as a veteran's salute to the National War Memorial. The group's website lists a second event, a protest and march by another group featuring anti-mask activist Chris Sky. He faces multiple charges across Canada, including for threats made to the lives of all premiers. Ottawa police are under pressure to avoid another occupation.
There are bikes attending our city this weekend, and we absolutely have no ability to prevent that from happening. What we can do is we can work to find the least intrusive, least offensive way for our community and the safest way.
Police say that includes an increased presence on the ground, enforcement on no parking and no stopping zones, and
we aren't allowing people to set up any sort of structures. You won't be setting up a barbecue in our streets.
Local police are also in touch with the RCMP and intelligence agencies about just how many people might show up this weekend and who may be among them, as they anticipate the first demonstration on vehicles here since the removal of the extra powers they had under the Emergencies Act. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, to the U.S. now. One of the country's top infectious diseases expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has made waves after suggesting the U.S. is moving out of the pandemic phase. To be clear, those are words that so many people have been waiting to hear. But as Katie Simpson explains, while that sounded like a declaration that the pandemic is finally over, the White House and now even Fauci himself are saying not so fast.
The out of the pandemic phase in this country.
Dr. Anthony Fauci has been one of the most consistent and trusted communicators in the U.S. throughout the pandemic.
And I don't know how.
And that is why the words he chose during an interview on PBS NewsHour triggered both hope and panic.
We are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase.
Fauci later clarified he thinks the U.S. is out of the full-blown explosive pandemic phase. And then later he gave a rare clarification to his clarification, saying the pandemic is more controlled, but is by no means over. Bungled messaging aside, the numbers are headed in a better direction. The Centers for Disease Control says there are more than 11,000 COVID patients in hospital right now, down from the peak of nearly 160,000 this past January. On average, 330 Americans are dying from COVID every day, down from January 2021's peak when the average passed more than 3,400 daily deaths.
So there's no question that we're in a different moment in our fight against COVID. But we also know COVID isn't over and the pandemic isn't over.
The White House tried to temper Fauci's initial message, appearing nervous his optimism could discourage Americans from getting boosters.
But we are still seeing people get very sick from COVID and cases of COVID, and we have measures that we should all continue to take to protect ourselves.
Nearly 60% of Americans have had COVID, Vice President Kamala Harris being the most recent high-profile diagnosis. She is working from home without symptoms, a new reality for many workers in this new pandemic phase. To have to make one clarification on such an important issue, that is significant. But to have to make two clarifications to get your messaging back on track, that's a difficult day for U.S. public health. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Okay, now we've asked infectious diseases specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh to join us because, Dr. Bogosh, I mean, Fauci's comments aside, what is your sense of the state of the pandemic in Canada?
We still have a lot of cases. We still have people getting sick. We still have people landing themselves in hospital and major disruptions to, for example, the healthcare sector and other sectors because people are sick and staying home. It's still very much here. Now, of course, it's significantly better than it was in prior waves. We have so much more immunity from vaccination, from recovery from infection, and it's definitely a lot different and a lot better compared to where it's been in the past. But in the same breath, of course, it still is impacting Canadian society significantly.
Right. So, I mean, I should get in trouble for asking you this, but are we even close then to being out of the pandemic phase? And what does that even look like?
We're wriggling our way through, but a lot of this really depends on who's defining what's a pandemic and what it means to be endemic. Regardless of where we're at, I think we can expect to see COVID-19 not go anywhere anytime soon. We'll see variants and waves continue to impact us here in Canada. That's going to happen for the foreseeable future. And with time, they'll just impact us less and less and less as we have greater community level protection through vaccination and recovery from infection and some combination of both.
Dr. Bogosh, always good to have you on the program. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Pharmaceutical giant Moderna has chosen Montreal as the location of its new research center and vaccine production plant. The new facility is set to be completed in 2024 and will be Moderna's first factory outside the United States. It's expected to create about 300 jobs and produce 30 million doses of vaccine each year. The formal announcement is expected on Friday from the Prime Minister and Quebec's Premier. Well, turning now to the war in Ukraine. Russia is being accused of weaponizing its gas supplies. It's cutting off natural gas to Poland and Bulgaria. And as Briar Stewart tells us, the move is Russia's biggest retaliation against international sanctions so far.
In front of a crowd of loyal lawmakers, President Vladimir Putin warned what will happen if anyone interferes with or threatens Russia. They should know that our strikes in response will be lightning fast. While he was boasting about Russia's vast nuclear arsenal, the country is also weaponizing its energy supplies. It cut gas off to Poland and Bulgaria because the countries refused to pay in rubles. The suspension of gas supplies is a gross violation of their contract and is blackmail, said Bulgaria's prime minister. The country gets 90% of its gas from Russia. Poland gets just over half of its supply, but was already weaning itself off Russian gas. With warm summer months ahead, there was little concern on the streets of Warsaw. It's spring and we won't have problems with warm water or with radiators. Thus, I'm not afraid, said this man. The European Commission framed Russia's latest move as a self-inflicted wound.
The Kremlin is hurting the Russian economy because they are cutting off themselves from important revenues.
But Europe is not united when it comes to Russian energy. The president of the European Commission said that any company that buys gas in rubles would be violating sanctions, but there are reports that some already have and more are making plans to do so.
already we're starting to see this unified stance fracture a bit. And of course, that is in itself one of Putin's goals here, to try to sow some form of discord.
Europe gets more than 40% of its gas from Russia. At the end of May, large contracts for Germany and Italy are set to expire. And if those countries don't pay in rubles, analysts say they could be cut off too. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Riga.
Well, on day 63 of this conflict, there's still intense fighting in Ukraine's south and east. Russian forces are slowly taking more ground, but some areas are now picking up the pieces after the bombardment. David Common is in Borodyanka, about an hour northwest of Ukraine's capital. He takes us through the search and rescue efforts in a town that became an unlikely target. And just to warn you, some of the images in this story are graphic.
Borodyanka had 71 lightly armed soldiers when the Russians arrived. They didn't stand a chance. Just look what the Russians did. Rescuers have already found 41 bodies in rubble, another 112 exhumed from graves, many shot dead. Now volunteers are painstakingly removing debris, searching for a mother and son believed buried here in a blast. Their dog, found in the basement, waits for a return that will likely never happen. I have a raging anger, says Yulia Tetenkina. We will never forget or forgive. The Russian missile landing right there. You see the crater, one of many across this town. And the thing that puzzles so many here is that this place isn't strategically important. It doesn't have a military base. It isn't along the road to Kyiv and necessary to seize. It just became a target. They wanted to intimidate people to show what could happen if they resist, the acting mayor Georgienko tells us. When Ukrainians protested in the southern city of Kherson today, their occupiers responded with tear gas. Russia said the attack on this steel mill in Mariupol would stop. It didn't. While Ukrainians are still putting up a fierce resistance, this is sometimes the outcome. Video from Russia's military celebrating their success. As Vladimir Putin's top aides warn, a third world war could happen if the West continues to intervene. Back in Borodyanka, City Hall is destroyed. So government now runs from a school where cell phones and other necessities are distributed. So behind this door are items the Russians looted that they left behind. They took kettles, laptops, bikes, even a microscope. The Russians aren't here now, but everyone believes they might come back. And they want to be ready. David Common, CBC News, Borodyanka, Ukraine.
Now, here in Canada, MPs in the House of Commons have unanimously approved a motion to recognize Russia's actions as genocide.
And all those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Motion is carried.
The motion is a strong statement, but does not call for any particular government action, and it doesn't involve direct consequences. Neither the United Nations nor the International Criminal Court have formally labeled Russia's actions as genocide. Families displaced by other wars are painfully frustrated by Canada's huge backlog of immigration and refugee files. Bonnie Allen shows us a 9-year-old boy who's been separated from his parents for 5 years. They are desperate to join him here, but so far, they can't even apply.
At his grandmother's house in Saskatoon, this is how 9-year-old Adnan Karsa stays connected to his father. The Syrian refugee has been apart from his parents for nearly 5 years, and he's never met his little sister.
I'll keep hugging them. I miss them a lot.
In 2017, as the Syrian war raged on, Adnan's parents sent him to Malaysia with his grandmother to escape the violence just for a few months. Then suddenly, his parents had to flee to Turkey. No passports, no money, no chance to reunite with their child.
Devastating, crying, and every time they talked about it, every time they called him, they would cry.
Eventually, Adnan's extended family in Canada privately sponsored him, his uncle, and his grandmother to come to Canada from Malaysia. They arrived last year, but getting his parents here has been difficult.
We've not even been permitted to put in any applications in the first 4 months of this year.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says it will accept some applications in May and that family reunification is a priority. But there is a huge backlog of cases, partly due to the pandemic.
It boils down to political commitment. Are the resources actually being provided to these offices in order to actually process backlogged applications?
Every case is urgent.
Adnan's family has been told it could take 3 years to get his parents here. The young boy loves living in Canada and tells his dad all about it. He asks him what's the first thing he'll do if he comes to Canada.
He's gonna hug me and cry. Cause like, he's gonna be so happy.
That day can't come soon enough for Adnan. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Saskatoon.
New York is making it mandatory for companies to be more transparent about the pay they offer.
My first salary was $42K.
Coming up, could we soon see it here?
I probably would not have applied, or if I applied, asked for more.
Plus, reevaluating Canada's end-of-life care.
I'm terrified when they say I can't have help.
We head to Denmark, where getting older doesn't have to mean leaving your home. And if you're tired of getting flyers at your door, one city found a solution. We're back in 2.
CBC News, The National, named Canada's best national newscast at the Canadian Screen Awards.
Nova Scotia's independent inquiry into the shooting rampage that left 22 people dead is examining the role of the perpetrator's RCMP disguise. Police collectibles and replicas, symbols of authority, and sometimes public trust used to deceive and murder. And Kayla Hounsel shows us now it's raising questions about whether they should be restricted.
This collection of police memorabilia was 45 years in the making, now wall to wall in the basement of this retired police officer.
So when we retire, it is an honor for us to be presented back our badge.
Some police agencies encase the badges in plastic so they can be mounted and not reused. Others print the word retired directly on the badge. But not everyone agrees that's enough to protect the public from police impersonators.
Whether it says retired on it or not, the public does not see that. They see a shiny badge. They don't bother to read it. They don't know what agency. They don't know if you're active.
This public inquiry is asking whether the advantages of allowing police to keep parts of their uniform outweigh the risks. A risk made all too real after a gunman killed 22 people while driving a replica RCMP cruiser and wearing parts of a Mountie uniform.
I can't count the number of times that I came home with blood on my uniform. Usually blood from other people, but sometimes it was mine. That's earning the uniform.
Retired officers say what's most important to them are their ceremonial uniforms, like the Red Surge, particularly when they wear them to honor fallen officers.
It symbolizes who we are, and it is a symbol of Canada around the world.
But this lawyer representing Indigenous people seeking police accountability has a different opinion.
I don't want to sound like I'm overstating, but I feel like these symbols are in fact terrorizing to some, as much as they are celebrated by others.
In Nova Scotia, a law banning the possession and sale of some police uniforms and equipment will take effect in 2 weeks. The federal government says it is not considering any changes to the criminal code right now, but looks forward to reviewing the commission's findings in November. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Ontario has committed billions to long-term care, but a leading Canadian expert says that's a bad strategy.
You're saying our entire approach is driven by developers and their bottom line.
Yeah. Should the focus be on growing old at home? Plus, a youth orchestra's clever comeback against a car commercial.
A big company like that couldn't find a youth orchestra to play the music.
Welcome back. With the new census data from Statistics Canada, we have fresh insight tonight into Canada's changing population. What is clear, the country is aging fast. From 2001 to 2021, the number of people 85 and up has doubled to 861,000 people. And projections show that number could triple by 2046 to 2.7 million. Now, that spike will no doubt put pressure on Canada's long-term care system. It has some experts urging Canada to take a different path and invest more in home care instead. That's what Denmark did. And as Erica Johnson reports, it's been a big success.
We've traveled to Denmark to get a glimpse at the kind of home care Canadians say they want. What is it that you find so interesting here?
It's a system that had the same problems that we had in Canada, but they took a completely different approach.
Our guide, Dr. Samir Sinha, one of Canada's leading geriatricians and policy advisors on elder care.
Denmark spends the majority of its funding on providing care in people's homes because fundamentally it's what people want, and it's the more economically sustainable approach.
Their model, says Sinha, is one Canada should adopt. 5 years ago, Margot Algie was diagnosed with ALS, a disease that attacks the central nervous system.
You're good?
Yeah, I no longer walk. My speaking is slowing down. Soon I'm going to not be able to swallow or breathe.
It's taking away her ability to care for herself, so home care workers come to help with everything from getting out of bed to toileting, showering, and fixing a meal.
Oh, great, thank you.
But the home care Margot is able to get is so limited she's often out of bed for just an hour or two a day, or she's told no one can come at all.
I'm terrified when they say I can't have help. Okay, bye.
Without home care, Margot's only other option, going to a nursing home, something she dreads. And she's not the only one.
We know that doesn't align with what aging Canadians want. Almost 100% want to stay in their homes as long as possible.
A recent study published by the Canadian Medical Association found the cost of caring for Canada's aging population is set to almost double in the next 10 years.
What we've had for a long time is a lot of tinkering around the edges, a lot of band-aids, but we haven't really had that deep transformative plan about where our population is going.
The transformation we need, says Sinha, shift priorities away from building nursing homes and towards home care.
Right now, we have a system that's geared towards building more beds. What I'm proposing would actually save us billions of dollars more and provide more people what they actually want and need.
Here's how it breaks down. To care for a person in long-term care costs about $200 a day. Home care for a high-needs person costs less than $100. Sinha laid it all out for the Ontario government 4 years ago, but says no one listened.
We committed $6.4 billion to build 30,000 new long-term care beds by 2028.
They chose, the solution that frankly is a lot more costly to taxpayers, but works really well for developers.
You're saying our entire approach is driven by developers and their bottom line. That's why we build long-term care and we don't support home care sufficiently.
Yeah.
But this week, on the verge of the next election, a new promise.
Government is planning to invest $1 billion more over the next 3 years to further expand home care.
What a day. Beautiful. Dr. Sinha has some ideas on how home care money could be spent. Slow the growth of nursing homes and focus on improving home care, like they've done in Denmark. Here, Johnny Olson gets care in his home 6 times a day. Possible because helping people age at home is a priority.
The goal is to strengthen his legs and make him walk better.
Unlike in Canada, all PSWs are trained to do rehab. It's all about prevention here. Spend early to keep people out of more expensive care later.
Hello.
Camilla Hovland manages home care for the region.
We have developed our home care from the last about 15 years to act more about rehabilitation, so that they actually maybe can take the bath by themselves or go to the kitchen and make their own food or what it may be.
Another preventative approach, everyone in Denmark automatically gets a home care visit once they hit 80.
We are saving money because if we get into the elderly's life before they need help, we can keep them from the help longer than if we don't get in.
Innovative ways to deliver home care is key, like this development, the House of Generations. Here, families, students, and folks needing home care all live in one apartment complex. People support each other.
How can you not love this, right?
We just came up from enjoying the company of little children.
I love it. My neighbor is a young student, and the next neighbor is a young family with a baby.
You have a neighbor who goes grocery shopping for you?
Yeah, if I want it, I can call them.
My best friend is Johanna. She is 90 years old. If we haven't seen each other for a day, she calls me. Are you alive? Yes. Are you? I'm only 50. You're 90. No. No.
Is there science behind what we're seeing here?
Yeah, there's an incredible amount of science showing that it really helps to stave off social isolation and loneliness amongst both sides of the generational span, but also improves health and well-being outcomes as well.
Knock, knock. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Erica.
It seems this apartment works really well because your chair can get anywhere.
Yeah. Apartments at the House of Generations have mobility aids built in to make home care possible right on site. How often do you have somebody come in?
6-7 times in a day.
An amount that's unheard of in Canada, where recipients are lucky if they get one visit a day. What do we need to get to this point?
We just need the political will that we've seen in this community, and really we have living proof that this can actually work already.
Sit. Good girl.
Margot hopes politicians are listening.
It's a really important part of our daily society.
The time for change, she says, is now.
Okay, so Erica, we just heard Ontario's Ford government promising another $1 billion for home care if re-elected in a few weeks' time. How about the other parties?
Well, the provincial NDP say that they too, if elected, will invest another $1 billion in home care, and the provincial Liberals say if they're elected, they'll invest $2 billion. So lots of promises all round.
Right, and yet it's not just about spending more money, is it? The differences we see in Denmark.
No, it's really about reprioritizing the money that we do spend. But fundamentally, Andrew, the big difference between Denmark and Canada is how older people are viewed. You know, when I was there, many people said to us, we don't call our old people seniors or elderly. We call them citizens because they're viewed as important, vital members of society. And so that carries on into programs where they respect their older people. Also, a lot more respect in Denmark for the workers. They are paid more, and that helps retain staff. A big problem we have here in Canada.
Erica Johnson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And after the break, it was an image of a Ukrainian refugee that captured the hearts of millions.
I decided to write it just on the skin.
We hear from the mother desperate to keep her daughter alive. Next. As Russia rained fire on Ukraine, bombs falling, the flood of refugees surging, Alexandra Makovey wrote the names and numbers of those who could help her daughter Vera right onto the toddler's back. You may have seen the image, an emblem of a mother's love and desperation. Makovey tells us how she came to do it and how their story ends.
I was still not believe that is going for real, and even on the last minute we were leaving our apartment, and like we were just like nervously smiling. And if it's for real, we have to do this. We have to just like put all our life in a small backpack and just left. My name is Alexandra Makovey, and my daughter's name is Vera Makovey, and we have to flee from Ukraine because my hometown Kiev was on fire. There was a lack of information about what's going on, and huge sounds of bombing, and we were not sure if we could flee from Kiev safe. There was a big traffic jam, like a huge queue. So I put contact details and laminate them on a small piece of paper, telephone numbers of our friends and relatives and grandma and granddad, and our address of our apartment, of our home. But then I realized that clothes could be removed in case of injury. I decided to write it just on the skin of my daughter. It was very painful and scary because I realized that I kept it in my mind that I'm doing it in case of our death. I started shaking, and it was like under my control. It because never heard that so like powerful sound in my life. I put her name, her date, Vera's date of birth, and also write my personal number. I decided to put it on the spine, but I was so shaking that I could choose the most, like the biggest part of her body. Yeah, Vera saw that we were playing with her. We used to play with the paints, with the pencils. And she just asked, Mama, ABC, ABC. She saw that I'm writing for her like some temporary tattoos. My posts became viral between Ukrainian parents because a lot of people do the same with their kids. Some of them came into my Instagram account and wrote me words of support. Bravo, Vera! Now we are on the south of France. We were invited by volunteers who offer us an apartment and taking care of us and surrounding us with the support and care and love. Of course, I hope we win and we can go home. It's not the safe place to return for now.
Wow, what a story. Okay, next on The National. If your mailbox is getting inundated with flyers, one city in Quebec found a solution, but it did land them in court. Plus,
her salary was $42K.
Pay transparency gaining momentum, but will provinces do anything about it? Stay with us. Welcome back. There is a growing movement to give more bargaining power to job seekers. And here's the latest example. Starting next month, employers in New York City who post job openings must include a salary range. And as Leanne Young shows us, Canadian workers are just as eager to get that information and to use it to get the best offer.
Michelle Hamoui has regrets about her first job in Canada. The IT project manager from Lebanon accepted a lowball job offer without knowing it.
By the time you get the offer, it's like, I invested so much time. I'll go in and then afterwards I'll show them how good I am and then they'll look at it, but that rarely happens.
She says knowing the salary range before she applied would have given her more bargaining power.
I probably would not have applied, or if I applied, asked for more.
Hamoui is among a growing number of Canadians demanding pay transparency laws, much like Colorado, or starting next month in New York City, where all job postings will require listed pay scales.
That has been shown to close the gender and racial wage gap in the sense that people don't ask for a salary that's lower than the wage band and they know what the maximum could be.
In Canada, other than public sector and unionized jobs, most salary information remains a secret. Ontario passed pay transparency laws in 2018, but the next progressive Conservative government delayed its implementation indefinitely. BC is now considering legislation.
What was the response like when you guys first implemented pay transparency?
This Vancouver software company decided to start posting its wages last year. They say it's paid off.
By creating a trusting relationship between our employees and the business, and we've seen a huge uptick in the number of candidates that have applied.
Many of their applicants are younger and like the clarity around salaries. They're part of a growing movement online.
My first salary was $42K.
My second executive assistant job was for a way bigger company. I was making $58.
For Hamoui, she hopes it won't be left up to individuals to share salaries.
There is zero reason for that not to be disclosed. The same way it's working in the public sector, there's no reason it shouldn't work for the private sector.
Openness that could help level the playing field. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Quebec municipality has won the legal right to stop advertising flyers from being dropped off at people's homes, unless the occupants clearly want them. We often dismiss those flyers as junk mail, but companies argue they are protected under free speech laws. Sarah Levitt shows us why other cities are watching this very carefully.
Suzanne Chenin says she eagerly awaits the bag full of flyers every week. The 81-year-old says she relies on them to find out what's on sale. The flyers, known as Publisac in Quebec, used to be automatically delivered to her home in Mirabel, just north of Montreal. Now, though, she has to put this sticker on her door saying yes to the delivery.
We have to find solutions to reduce the amount of paper will going to the landfill.
In 2019, the city adopted an opt-in system for the flyers, arguing the environmental impact is just too high. Across Canada, towns and cities are grappling with the same issue. Halifax had originally hoped to do what Mirabel has done. Instead, an opt-out system is now in place.
Legal folks went and had a look at it. They thought that there could be a challenge to the freedom of expression laws with the opt-in.
They weren't entirely wrong. In Mirabel, the flyer distributor Transcontinental sued to have the opt-in system quashed on the principle of free speech.
The justification is that in a free market society, it's important for consumers to have access to information, and advertising is a source of information.
A Quebec Superior Court judge has denied the company's request.
Advertisers have other options apart from this Publisac. They can use social media, they can have billboards. In that context, this is a justified restriction on the freedom of expression.
Mirabel is the first in Quebec to implement the opt-in system, but Montreal has announced it'll do the same by 2023. Transcontinental is appealing the court decision and says it won't deliver in Mirabel anymore. Instead, Canada Post will ensure residents like Chenin who want the flyers get them. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, after the break, a battle of the bands, a car manufacturer against a New Brunswick youth orchestra.
The New Brunswick Youth Orchestra has an infinity of young talent.
Their musical singer is next. You may have seen this car commercial recently, poking a little bit of fun at student orchestras. Well, the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra was having none of it, and they clapped back, showcasing what a youth orchestra is truly capable of. And their message is our moment.
Have you seen the new Nissan Infiniti ad? Can you imagine? A big company like that couldn't find a youth orchestra to play the music.
The first thing for us to say is we're not against Nissan and Infiniti, not in any way, but we are for the kids and for music. That's partly where the inspiration came for our response to the Nissan video.
The New Brunswick Youth Orchestra has an infinity of young talent.
Even though it's tongue-in-cheek, there's still this tired old stereotype of youth and bad music. And so our message here is that our kids have amazing talent. By the way, Nissan Infiniti, if you need a youth orchestra, come and see us.
I will admit, the first time I saw the Nissan Infiniti ad, I didn't realize that there would be any measure of, or any large measure of backlash to that. Apparently there was on their YouTube channel to the ad, so good on the New Brunswick Youth Orchestra for making that counter ad, and they've got lots of supportive emails ever since. That's The National for this April 27th. Have a good night.